Someone who does know a lot about this is Jonathan Miller. He's the general counsel of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, and he is a partner in charge of a D.C. law firm called Frost Brown Todd. Jonathan, thanks very much for coming on the program. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having this, Dan.
All right, so look, let's take this from the beginning. All right, we have got plenty of time, and my audience is sophisticated. So you can get wonky with us. You can get detailed here. Let's start with what happened in 2018. All right, tell us what happened in 2018, how the law was changed.
I'd love to just briefly go to 2014 because
Okay, go to 2014.
2014, yeah, the 2014 Farm Bill provided for a pathway for the sale of hemp and hemp products in a pilot program initiative. And so states were allowed to experiment with hemp.
Now let
The
me
leading,
just take one. I'm gonna pause you for a second. Explain
yeah,
to us what hemp is, right?
okay.
What is hemp? Because there's even confusion, I think, among many as to what is the definition of hemp.
Yeah, and hemp to has so many different definitions, and that's part of the problem here. So when we used to think of hemp, we used to think of the fiber part of the hemp of the cannabis plant, that the part that would go towards rope and canvas and uniforms, and nowadays is used for plastics and construction materials and clothing. That is what we used to consider hemp. In 2014, the definition of hemp was changed under law to say that anything that has these cannabis plants that have less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC on a dry weight basis, anything below 0.3% is hemp, anything above 0.3% is marijuana. So that happened in 2014. And around 2015 or 16, people were able to figure out a way to use hemp, use the plants that had less than zero point 0.3 to create CBD products. And CBD really took hold. And there were a lot of questions as to whether or not CBD was actually federally legal. So in 2018, McConnell came back to the table and not only took those pilot programs and made them permanent, but he also said that we're not just going to define hemp as the plant itself, but we're also going to define its cannabinoids, extracts, and derivatives. And those are three big words that bring in CBD into the picture. So I know there's a
But
lot of
let's
talk about.
but
Oh, go
again,
ahead.
but we I think again I'm taking us back a little bit. But CBD, distinguish CBD for us from THC. I mean, I really want this to be sort of
Sure.
like a hemp law for dummies,
Yeah.
right? So make sure when you refer to the CBD, explain to us the difference between CBD and THC, et cetera.
Yeah. So the cannabis plant has a few dozen what are called cannabinoids, and so they make up the within the flower of the plant. They make up the part of the plant that helps with your health and wellness, or potentially gets you high. The two most famous cannabinoids in the plant are THC, which is the cannabinoid that gets people high, and there's CBD, which has been used in a lot of settings for pain relief, anxiety relief, etc.
Right, and CBD is nowhere near as controversial as THC, right?
Correct. Correct.
Right. So again, take us through. So between 2014 to 2018, this is an issue with regard to CBD or THC or both.
Well, it's a little of both because there was a desire to support the legality of CBD products. But
Hmm.
the discovery also in that time was that the most popular and most effective CBD products also had a little bit of THC in them. There's something called
Mm-hmm.
the entourage effect, that if you have a full spectrum and use all of those dozen cannabinoids, that is what gets you the stress relief, the anxiety relief, the pain relief. There are products called CBD isolates that are just they pull out of the plant the CBD and CBD only, and that's about 5% of the marketplace. It's not very popular because it really, for most people, does not provide the effect that they're looking for when they're getting a CBD product.
All right, and we're talking to Jonathan Miller, General Counsel of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. So in 2018, Mitch McConnell tries to change this farm law in an effort to help farmers, right?
Correct. That was his whole point, is helping Kentucky farmers, particularly Kentucky farmers that were in the tobacco space and were, losing a whole lot of business because of the decline of that industry.
So he wanted to ensure that these farmers could continue to grow and cultivate this hemp as long as it had below a certain amount of this THC.
Correct.
Connell has taken the position the solution to that was what, Jonathan Miller? Before I ask you to evaluate and assess what you think about what he's doing, what did he do?
So what he said was that, and first of all, I agree with 99% of what he said in that statement. So that was an accurate statement. What we disagree with is his solution to it. So what his solution was is, let's say, that we are going to only allow for hemp products to be out in the marketplace that basically have zero THC in them. Zero THC. Now they use a figure of 4 milligrams of THC per package. There aren't any products out there that are between 0 and zero point 0.4 milligrams per package. So really, what he's saying that is at any level of THC in it, it now becomes a marijuana, which is, as you know, a federally illegal product.
Okay. And that has now been sort of snuck into this Senate bill. I guess the first question I'll ask you before I ask you about the politics of it is, what do you think the solution ought to be? If what you're saying is that 99% of what Senator McConnell said is accurate, I assume that you believe that the focus should be on regulation rather than banning, right?
Yeah. So when McConnell passed his 2018 Farm Bill, there was specific language in there that basically confirmed that the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, had the regulatory authority to regulate hemp products. That day, that night, the FDA Commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, came out with a statement saying that we are going to start investigating a path towards regulation. It is now 7 years later, and they have done practically nothing. And a couple years ago, they basically said, well, we actually need more statutory authority to do anything. So we have now had a completely unregulated marketplace from the federal level. I've testified before Congress 3 times, and each time I concluded my testimony saying, please regulate us. You very rarely see an industry go into Congress and say, we want to be regulated, particularly by the FDA.
Mm-hmm.
But we recognize that this was a problem and that we had a lot of good actors who were self-regulating, who were abiding by FDA standards for these kinds of products, but a whole lot of bad actors out there that weren't. And so what McConnell is doing is throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and instead of targeting the bad actors through regulation, is eliminating all the good actors as well, which we think, frankly, only empowers the really bad actors who are now going to sell this stuff on the black market. I mean, Dan, this is a $28 billion industry. There's demand for it. People want these products. They're going to find them. But instead of going through an FDA-approved process, they're going to be going through the black market to get these products if this legislation stands.
We're talking to Jonathan Miller, General Counsel of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable. We'll take your calls, by the way, at 866-967-6887. All right, now let me ask you about the politics of it. This has passed for now. Politically, what happens now?
Well, so the good news is the appropriators who put this language in there realized that this is going to be controversial. And probably realized that making these kinds of decisions in a back room was not the most scientific or effective way of going about changing policy. So they put in that this would not take effect for 365 days. I think we've got 356 days left. But in that period, the industry, as well as a whole lot of new people who didn't realize that what was happening and who are demanding change, we believe that we will be able to get a fix to replace this ban language with strong, robust regulation.
Is it more Democrats on your side or more Republicans?
Well, it's been a bipartisan issue. And again, to start off with, McConnell was our champion. Rand Paul has been our champion for a long time. Over on the House side, Jamie Comer, who he and I worked together on getting hemp legal in Kentucky to begin with, and Morgan Griffith, who's a Freedom Caucus member. A lot of good Republicans that
A lot
support
of
this.
Kentucky folks. A
Yeah, a
lot of
lot of
interest
Kentucky
in this in
folks.
Kentucky.
Yeah. But when there was a vote on the Senate floor, whether to, and Rand Paul put an amendment saying, let's strip this language from the bill that reopened government. The vote was uh, 74 to 26, with only two Republicans voting for Paul, Rand himself and Ted Cruz. The Democrats, about two-thirds of them supported us.
Mm.
I don't think that a is saying that the Republicans necessarily were against us, but they were confronted with a decision whether or not this was not actually on the substance of the bill, but whether to table the discussion. And so they were having to decide whether to go through more discussion and debate and time on this hemp issue, or reopen government and have SNAP benefits go
Right.
to people and let the commuters get to airline flights. So they were it put in an impossible choice, and most Republicans decided they're going to stick with this reopening government.
And so, again, to be clear, if the law that's currently in place moves forward in 350 whatever days, what are the businesses that are going to be wiped out?
So this is the important thing. So everything that is treated that is above zero point 0.4 milligrams per container is now federally illegal.
And you
And
telling us that everything is above that, right?
well, so
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
95% of stuff is. I was talking about these CBD isolate products that have zero THC. They would be below that. But again, they're not a very popular product. But there's other language that would probably take us another show to go through and would really bore your listeners, that talks about how hemp can be extracted and THC levels of those extractions, that our farmers and extractors believe would make it impossible even to sell the CBD isolate products. So really, we're talking near 100% of hemp products currently on the marketplace. And to be clear, that your grandmother who uses CBD for her sleep or her aches and pains, to get CBD would be committing a federal crime, Schedule One drug equivalent to fentanyl or heroin. That's how
So,
CBD would
so
be treated in this.
again, right, and that's why again I'm trying to make sure we're all on the same page about CBD versus THC. So you're telling us that all, not the THC products, but almost all of the CBD products on the market today would be illegal under this new law?
Yeah, depending on how you interpret the intermediate section, most would be illegal. Possibly, if you interpret it the way I just did, it could be 100% of them could be illegal because of the extraction penalties.
What are the extraction penalties? Just
I'm,
explain that one
I'm
more
sorry,
time.
because of to extract the CBD,
Yeah.
it's a process that the THC in the plant spikes to a level in the intermediate stages that would be considered illegal under the
Oh, I
language.
see.
Yeah,
I
sorry about
see.
that.
Jonathan Miller, General Counsel of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, is basically telling us that, okay, fair enough, then regulate us. And the thing that I find to be kind of interesting about this is they refer to these intoxicants, right, as if just being an intoxicant is somehow criminal. And yet, there are arguments to be made on both sides, but some would say that alcohol can be more dangerous. I'm not sure that I agree with it, but there's certainly an argument to be made, and there's no doubt that alcohol is an intoxicant.
Yeah, and not to bash alcohol or the alcohol industry, but if you look at the facts and figures in terms of deaths and accidents and ruined lives, there's a whole lot more in the alcohol space than in the hemp space. It's not even close. And yeah, and McConnell's real point is intoxicants are bad. Intoxicants that get to children are worse. I know of a lot of children that get into their parents' liquor drawer as well. So it's not able to do 100%. But
All right.
there are good laws in the alcohol space that punish people that sell these products to minors. There are laws in some states that do it for hemp, but there's no federal law that says that you can't sell one of these products to a minor, and that's the leading point that we would like to see in regulation.
All right, I've got a full call board here of people who want to talk to you about this. But final, real quick, what do you expect is going to happen? Do you expect to be able to, within the year, have the law changed?
So the first thing that we are trying to do as an industry is to take that 1 year period and turn it into 2 years. To get
Mm.
a significant regulatory piece of legislation passed through Congress takes time, and we're not sure 355 days will do that. But also, even more importantly, our farmers are going to have to decide around February or March whether or not they're going to plant hemp in the field. And if they think that there's going to be a ban, then they won't. And so we are hopeful that as part of the continuing resolution that will probably, who knows, but there'll be a continuing resolution sometime at the end of January to continue to keep government opening. We hope that that is a vehicle to get that extended for another year. And while that's going on, we are working very closely with folks like Morgan Griffith, who I mentioned before, Freedom Caucus member, chairs the Health Subcommittee of the House Energy and Commerce Committee that has jurisdiction over these issues. And then over on the Senate side, we're working with Ron Wyden, who's a liberal Democrat from
Yeah.
Oregon. And they both are going to be introducing in the coming weeks bills that would robustly regulate these products.